Welcome once again to the Rashi Nosh. I'm Pastor Matt.
I'm Kara.
Thank you for joining us again. This week we are in Parasha Vayeshev. And just like last week, we have some family drama. We have some reconciliation that needs to take place. I feel like you could have a soap opera about this particular section of the scripture. There's a lot of drama that happens. This is that famous Torah portion about the coat of many colors. In Hebrew, this is a ketonet pasim. And I'm telling you that because we're going to come back to that in just a little bit about what this means, a ketonet pasim, and another word that it's related to. But I wanted to talk a little bit about unintended consequences because Rashi seems to say, more than imply, that the reason that there was this contentiousness between Joseph and his brothers, it at least was amplified by this gift of this coat. And I love what you had said earlier as we were talking about this lesson about, well, was it that everybody got a coat and his was just more special? No, it's just he was the only one that got this gift. And we as parents, we have 3 children. They're all adults now. Our youngest is 19. But we have always tried, if we were going to give them a gift, if we were at the holidays or if we're at on a trip and maybe we're getting souvenirs or something, we always try to make sure that each of our children had something comparable as a gift, that it wasn't like, oh, somebody got something really special and expensive and we got something else. Do you think when our kids were younger, that's probably something we had to worry more about than now, don't you think?
Yeah, I think so, because I think now, as they're older, they understand the value of different things and understanding that this is a need versus a want, that kind of stuff. But yes, when they're little, I don't know what Jacob was thinking.
It was probably not the best move.
No, definitely not.
Yeah, and as our kids get older, I mean, there are certain times when, they might, like what their list of wants, I might want this particular item. I might want a musical instrument, or I might want this or whatever. But when one of their birthdays comes along now, they might just say, listen, I'd rather just have money that I can use to put gas in my vehicle or to do whatever. We tend to get a little more practical as we get older. But this whole thing, let me just read this verse here. We're in chapter 37 of Genesis, and it says that Joseph, more than all of his sons, was a child in his old age, and he made him a fine woolen tunic. And his brothers saw that it was he whom their father loved most of all his brothers, and so they hated him, and they were not even able to speak to him peaceably. So a couple of things that we found interesting that Rashi says. It says that at least they didn't speak one thing with their mouth to Joseph, act nice to him, and then have another thing in their heart when he wasn't around. So what Rashi basically says is, about the phrase, and they were not able to speak to him peaceably, out of this remark of the disagreement of them, we learn that their praise, they did not speak one thing with their mouth and another in their heart. So they were not hypocritical. Their actions reflected their feelings. So in the one way, we could at least say, well, they're not hypocritical.
That's true.
That's something positive. I remember a long time ago, there was a phrase, if you don't have anything nice to say, then don't say anything at all. And that's apparently what they were doing here. Mm-hmm. This is something that Jacob did to show love to Joseph. But unfortunately, what he did to show love to Joseph caused a rift in them that was probably already there a bit. We have children of 4 different moms, and so each mom has, their own agendas, I'm sure. And not only that, Joseph begins to have these ability to interpret dreams, and he has dreams, and he's very public with what his dreams were. You guys are going to bow down to me, all this stuff, which is probably a story for another teaching. Maybe if the Lord gives you a vision of your family bowing down to you, maybe you keep that one between him and you, that maybe that's a lesson for us. But what he intended to be a loving act, it caused a rift in the brothers. Just last week, we're talking about reconciliation between brothers. And here we have this theme again. It's like a repetition of the theme. But that's why I want to bring up the idea of the Hebrew of this woolen tunic or coat, or however we want to say, robe, whatever it was. the ketonet pasim. It is striped. It has many colors on it. It has stripes. But Rabbi Shapira has told us that the word pasim is related to the word piusim, which means to reconcile, to make peace, to come back together. It's interesting to me that this robe, this coat that comes from a word that's related to the word to reconcile, did the opposite of reconciliation with these brothers. We have to be so careful, I think, with not only what we do, but the motivation behind it. And I think maybe there's a lesson for us too of maybe if someone in our family or maybe someone at work, maybe somebody gets something really nice and we don't. Maybe somebody got a bonus at their job and we did not. And how do we respond to that? Do we make peace? Do we just sit in jealousy and anger and we're mean to someone? Sometimes it seems unfair when someone gets something that we don't. And maybe even it is. Maybe it is unfair. But the reaction that we have, I don't think should be the one that Joseph's brothers have. I think there needs to be this idea of piusim, this idea of reconciliation, of coming back together. And we see, once all this stuff happens that's going to unfold in the future Torah portions, they did feel bad about what they did to Joseph.
Yeah.
They did want to reconcile with him. They were grateful that he was alive and that he was okay. So this is really the beginning of something. It could go a couple different ways. Mm-hmm. It could really destroy the family dynamic, or there could be reconciliation. And it's so tough. It's so hard in our relationships. Like we said last week, these are siblings. So there is this, somewhere buried deep beneath the hate, there is this love. Mm-hmm. And maybe we could even say, do you think we could say the reason that the hatred was so passionate is because underneath it there is this family connection, there is this love.
Yeah, well, and that's also, I mean, clearly Jacob did love him more, and for good reason in a way. You know, I mean, he was the son of his wife that he loved the most, and because there was past choices that allowed that to be an issue where there were 4 wives. Unfortunately, the consequences just keep going down the line, and poor Joseph just gets that kind of heaped on him. Whether or not he amplified the issue or not, he definitely had a lot placed on him that was out of his control.
Yes.
But I think, like you said, unfortunately, he was there, and the brothers did see it and reacted not the way that they should have necessarily. But they kept in the family, but it's sometimes we just have to have time to get over some things. You know what I mean? Sometimes they just needed that little bit of space between Joseph to realize, well, it doesn't matter if he was Jacob's favorite. He's still our brother, and we're happy that we made a what's that phrase that people say something? They say a long-term solution to a short-term problem. Yep. They kind of jumped the gun there. You know what I mean? By getting rid of him and killing him, that they thought they'd killed him. That was, they were having a momentary issue, and they made a choice that could have potentially, had God not intervened, been a long-term solution that they really would have regretted.
Yes, and I like what you said there. In Targum Onkelos, it says, to speak about him peaceably means the brothers did not speak ill of Joseph to others. So on the one hand, this is an interfamily thing, and they're not just going about giving a bad report to other people. They, as you said, they sort of kept it in the family. There's that. It's interesting to me that it's not that Joseph said to his father, could you make me a special coat? I think I'd really like a special, striped tunic. Joseph really didn't have anything to do with this decision of Jacob's to make him this coat. And in a way, like I said, Rashi seems to at least imply, if not say directly, that the problems between Joseph and his brothers are somewhat, the blame is somewhat placed on Jacob for doing this thing. But it is interesting, the idea of the thing that caused the division, there can be reconciliation. The ketonet pasim, the striped coat, but also the piyusim, the reconciliation, the being able to come back together and make a rectification. Last thing that I will say is Rabbi Shapira has said before that this is a wonderful picture. Joseph is always a picture of the Messiah, but one thing that Rabbi Shapira said is you've got to realize this is him wearing something on his body. He's got stripes on his back, and this can refer to prophetically the stripes that we learn about in Isaiah 53. By his stripes we are healed. So this is something that Jacob did. It had a certain result, but in the end, because love between family members should be deeper than just the connection that you have to a friend. There should be that deep connection, and that deep connection can be repaired. There's hope for that, and we certainly see that with Joseph. For the rest of the book of Genesis, we're going to be talking about the life of Joseph all the way up through his death, and so this is a narrative that's going to be playing out in very interesting ways. And like I said, it's almost like a soap opera. I kind of feel like if you made this into a movie, people would find it unrealistic.
Yeah, it's true.
There's so many ups and downs. Thank you for joining us for the Rashi Nosh again for Parashat Vayeshev. We want to wish you and your family all the richest blessings from God. And thank you for tuning in with us. Subscribe to this channel so you can see these videos every week. Shalom.